Now, the age of climate hysteria is upon us. We discussed earlier this week the BBC weather forecast, scandalous hot lava red tones representing the rather temperate high of 75 degrees. But since then, we've had more. The climate lobby is quite literally ramping up the heat. Yesterday, The Guardian claimed that the Gulf Stream could collapse as early as 2025, but it was soon debunked by world-leading climate scientist Jonathan Foley, who explained the publication had confused the entire Gulf Stream with the much smaller current, the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. He said, quote, "It's like comparing a superhighway with a side street. There is zero chance the Gulf Stream will collapse," unquote. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, is considered the most rigorous authority on climate change, and its annual reports publish all sorts of scenarios over the next 100 years or so based on forecasts. The point is, these are forecasts, and there are a range of them. The climate fanatics, like Just Stop Oil, focus on the worst-case scenarios and then treat them as if they were fact. The fearmongers also fail to mention that a global study showed about 500,000 people die annually from heat, but 4.5 million people die from cold. This means as temperatures have increased over 20 years, this has caused an extra 116,000 heat deaths each year. But the fanatics don't mention that this now sees 283,000 fewer cold deaths every year. As Bjorn Lomborg points out, so far climate change saves 166,000 lives every year. And these claims all act as a pretense under which costly net zero policies are being implemented. Climate change is undoubtedly a real issue, but the solutions do not lie in making us colder or poorer or in fear-mongering. In fact, it could be the fear-mongering that creates a greater danger in itself, that of a declining population. The Times revealed earlier this week that only half of Generation Z and millennials plan to start families. This is a real crisis, and not one that is invented, but people aren't fretting about it as much as climate change. The UK birth rate sits at 1.56 per woman. This is significantly below the replacement rate of 2.1, which would keep the population at a stable level. But with fewer children, the population shrinks and the population ages. Now, in this country, immigration has been a short-term palliative, but in countries such as Japan, they haven't had that, and they're already beginning to see the problem, as we do because of life expectancy, which has meant that the number of retired people is supported by a smaller number of taxpayers. The low birth rate exacerbates that problem and would mean that you have a smaller tax base to support those who are retired and need the help, the benefits, the healthcare. Now, Japan has led the way in this. Its birth rate is even lower than ours, and it hasn't had immigration, so it's already suffering these consequences. And interestingly, the Times findings showed that one of the main reasons why young people are reluctant to have children is because of climate change. Hence my concern about the fear-mongering that has been created over this issue. And the idea that having children means damaging the environment is anyway, in and of itself, mistaken. Interestingly, older and younger people have different economic attributes. It's been reported by The Economist, not a particularly conservative newspaper or magazine. It fleshed this out. Old people, interestingly, have crystallized intelligence, and that is a stock of knowledge built up over a long period of time, expertise, if you will, wisdom. Meanwhile, young people tend to have more fluid intelligence, meaning the ability to engage with new ideas and to be more innovative. So in other words, a younger population means a more innovative population. What's the number one way we can deal with climate change? The way we've made things cleaner over centuries, it's by innovation. If you have an ageing population in which fewer and fewer people have children, in Britain and indeed the world, then we'll become less innovative and less inventive, and that will create problems of its own. If we want an economy that can tackle climate change, we need more children. And I've done my bit by having 6, so now let me encourage you to do yours. The more children, the merrier.